1998's Metal Gear Solid is widely regarded as a classic in the industry. Now, Konami and Hideo Kojima are bringing together a completely new retelling of the Shadow Moses incident with the digital graphic novel. The novel itself isn't particularly a game per se. It's more of an experience where you get to see exactly what happened surrounding the entire Shadow Moses incident, and it's broken down into three parts. There's the VR simulation, which is the story itself from beginning to end, including the recruiting of Snake all the way to the escaping of Shadow Moses. The mental search mode, which allows you to look for clues and memories related to specific instances during the incident itself. And the memory building section, which allows you to place those instances on a grid to gain a better insight into what actually happened to Snake and all of the characters attached to the Shadow Moses incident. The VR simulation can either be played as a full 2-hour movie or essentially page through item by item as if you were flipping the pages of a graphic novel. As you go through, you're given a visually impressive style by artist Ashley Wood, who's drawn the Metal Gear Solid graphic novel right now, and his style itself is rather expressionistic and really engaging. You'll see a lot of detailed shots and scenes during some of the slower story-driven elements, and then some smaller, sometimes more wiry and live figures for some of the action sequences, such as when Snake faces off against some of the boss characters. It's a really interesting visual style, and you really get a sense of how visceral this action is in the game itself. As you're going along, you have the option to basically enter what's called the mental search mode, where you go through and it's kind of like hunting for clues. You look around and you can zoom in and out of every single shot and find little hidden elements. These items are kind of related to what happened during the game. For instance, you might find a gun, or you might find something that relates to a specific moment, like the DARPA chief having his heart attack. And all of these are key moments or key items that somewhat relate to the mission itself. And once you've collected all of them, whether you've tried to go through the entire story or you've pieced through a certain section, you can enter into the memory building mode. Now, it's kind of important because you're not going to find every single item on your first playthrough. In fact, you're going to have to go through this digital graphic novel over and over again, and also enter this memory building section over and over again to fully piece together what happened on Shadow Moses. The memory building mode is a matrix that basically places every single item in a grid, and you have to make the connections between one section to another. All in all, it's a very visually engaging way of telling the original story of Metal Gear Solid. There are a couple of problems that here and there kind of define exactly what makes up the hardcore fan from the casual fan of the Metal Gear Solid series. For instance, when you need to zoom in to highlight or find certain items, the analog nub isn't as sensitive as you might want it to be. This also carries over to the memory building matrix, where you'll sometimes frustratedly circle around a certain item just to try and unlock or connect one piece to another, and the analog nub doesn't have the sensitivity that you really want it to make your time a little bit easier. The other problem is, because it's not exactly a game, unless you're a really hardcore fan, you might not necessarily find yourself that interested in going back into the game, trudging through some of the sequences just to find certain elements. But there is a reward for those of you who are interested in going back and searching through all of these videos and all of these scenes, because this is really a compilation and an encyclopedic form of the story itself, with every single person, every single item, and every single incident fully detailed. If you're not necessarily a hardcore fan, or you're kind of a casual fan here and there, you may find this to be an interesting experience, but probably one of those things that you'll play through once or twice before moving on to the actual game itself.